The day of my funeral, my husband kissed his mistress over my coffin. I watched in rage as they celebrated, not knowing I'd return with 30 years of their secrets, and this time I won't be their shield. Standing in front of my mirror at age 23, I touch my smooth, unwrinkled face in disbelief. Today is the day Li Wei will propose again. My hands shake as memories of my past life flood back. I died at 52 watching my husband kiss his lover beside my hospital bed while I struggled for my last breath. Now I have a second chance. My mother calls from downstairs, her voice full of excitement. Sarah, hurry. The Zhang family will be here soon. I smile, remembering how proud she was the first time around. The Zhangs are one of the most respected families in our city. Their son Li Wei is handsome, well-educated, and seems perfect to everyone. Only I know the ugly truth hiding behind his gentle smile. I put on the red dress my mother bought for today. Last time I spent hours getting ready, desperate to impress the Zhangs. This time I barely bother with makeup. Let them see me as I am. Mrs. Zhang's critical eyes will find fault anyway, she always does. The doorbell rings and I hear Mrs. Zhang's loud voice greeting my parents. She's brought expensive gifts just like before. I remember how these same gifts became chains that bound me to their family. Where is our lovely Sarah? She calls up the stairs. I take a deep breath and walk down. Li Wei stands beside his mother, holding a bouquet of roses. He looks so young, so innocent, nothing like the cruel man who destroyed me in my past life. Sarah, he says softly, you look beautiful. I force myself to smile, knowing he's already seeing Mei Ling behind my back. Sweet, gentle Mei Ling, who played the victim so well while helping him spend our family's money. Mrs. Zhang hugs me tight, her expensive perfume choking me. What a perfect match, she exclaims. My son needs a sensible wife like you. I hear the hidden meaning in her words now. They need a shield, someone to show society while Li Wei does whatever he wants. Last time I was too naive to understand. We sit down for tea and the negotiations begin. Mrs. Zhang talks about Li Wei's wonderful job, their family's status, and all they can offer me. My parents beam with pride. Under the table, my fingers dig into my palms. In my past life, this tea ceremony trapped me in a 30-year nightmare. Sarah, Li Wei says right on cue, I have something to ask you. He kneels, pulling out the same ring I wore for 3 decades. My mother gasps in delight. Mrs. Zhang dabs at her eyes with a silk handkerchief, playing the role of happy mother-in-law perfectly. Will you marry me? Li Wei asks. His eyes hold the same fake sincerity I fell for before. Behind him, Mrs. Zhang nods encouragingly. She thinks she's found the perfect daughter-in-law, quiet, obedient, easily controlled. Time seems to freeze. In my past life I said yes immediately. I became the perfect shield they wanted. I handled their business meetings, attended family events, and maintained their image while Li Wei spent time with Mei Ling. When rumors started, I defended him. When money disappeared, I covered it up. When his mother insulted me, I stayed silent. Looking at Li Wei now, I see every lie ahead of us. I see the lonely nights, the hidden phone calls, the secret bank accounts. I see myself growing bitter and tired, trapped in a marriage that only served his family's reputation. Yes, I say, watching their relieved faces. But inside, my mind is already racing with plans. They think they're getting the same naive girl they destroyed before. Instead, they're getting someone who knows all their secrets, who has seen their true faces, who knows exactly how their perfect family falls apart. Mrs. Zhang raises her glass in a toast. To the perfect couple, she announces. My parents join in happily. Li Wei squeezes my hand, playing the devoted fiancé. I squeeze back, remembering how he held Mei Ling's hand the same way at my funeral. Let them celebrate. Let them think they found their perfect shield again. This time, I'm not their protection, I'm their destruction. Mrs. Zhang talks about wedding plans, about the big house they'll give us, about all the social events we'll attend together. I nod and smile just like before. But this time is different. This time I know about the family business troubles they're hiding. I know about the bribes, the affairs, the lies. I know how Mrs. Zhang manipulates everyone around her. I know how Li Wei uses his charm to deceive. I know where Mei Ling fits into their perfect plan. As evening falls and they prepare to leave, Mrs. Zhang hugs me again. Welcome to the family, dear, she says warmly. I know you'll make us proud. Over her shoulder, I see Li Wei checking his phone, probably messaging Mei Ling already. I watch their car drive away, touching the heavy ring on my finger. Last time this ring was my prison. This time it's my weapon. They wanted a shield to protect their perfect image. Instead, they've just handed their destruction a front-row seat to their lives. Tomorrow the real game begins. 3 weeks after the engagement, Mrs. Zhang starts pushing for a quick wedding. Spring is the perfect time, she insists, sitting in our living room with her wedding planner. All the best venues are already booking up. I remember this rush from my past life. They needed to secure their perfect daughter-in-law before anything could go wrong. What they don't know is that I've already started pulling threads that will unravel their perfect facade. Yesterday, I visited the bank where Li Wei works and had a fascinating conversation with his manager. It seems large sums of money have been moving through accounts connected to the Zhang family business. Money that shouldn't exist. Sarah, dear, are you listening? Mrs. Zhang waves her hand in front of my face. We need to schedule your dress fitting. I smile apologetically, playing my role. In my past life, I spent hours trying on expensive white dresses to please her. This time I have other appointments to keep. After the wedding planning session, I meet my new ally reporter Chen. 30 years ago, he tried to expose the Zhang family's corruption but was silently paid off. This time I found him first. We meet in a quiet coffee shop far from the banking district. The documents you showed me, Chen says quietly, they're definitely suspicious. But the Zhang family is powerful. They've buried stories before. I slide a USB drive across the table. They haven't buried these stories, I reply. 3 decades of secrets saved up waiting to be told. That evening, Li Wei takes me to dinner at an expensive restaurant. He's playing the perfect fiancé, but his phone keeps lighting up with messages. I pretend not to notice when he excuses himself to take a call. Instead, I signal the waiter, another ally from my past life, who helps me access the restaurant's security cameras. Li Wei is in the alley, holding Mei Ling close, promising her everything will work out. I remember how I discovered their relationship in my past life, walking in on them at our house on my birthday. This time I'm 10 steps ahead. I've already traced Mei Ling's connections to the Zhang family business. She's not just Li Wei's lover, she's helping them move money overseas. In my past life, I discovered this too late after the family business collapsed and took my savings with it. When Li Wei returns to our table, his caller slightly askew, I ask innocently about his family's upcoming business dinner. He freezes for a split second. He didn't expect me to know about it. Just a small gathering, he lies smoothly. What he doesn't know is that I've already spoken to every major investor attending that dinner. Seeds of doubt have been carefully planted. The next morning, Mrs. Zhang calls in a panic. Someone has been asking questions about their family foundation, the one they used to hide their illegal dealings. Sarah, dear, she says, trying to sound calm, has Li Wei mentioned any problems at work? I assure her everything seems fine, all while forwarding more documents to reporter Chen. Li Wei starts showing signs of stress. He cancels our dinner plans, claims he's working late. I drive past his office at midnight. His car isn't there. Instead, he's at Mei Ling's apartment, probably planning their escape route. Just like last time when the family business started crumbling, he'll try to run away with her. But this time I've already frozen the secret accounts they don't think I know about. During another wedding planning session, Mrs. Zhang's facade cracks slightly. She receives a phone call that makes her face turn pale. One of their longtime business partners has suddenly pulled out of a major deal. She tries to blame it on market conditions, but I can see the fear in her eyes. The carefully built house of cards is starting to shake. That weekend, the Zhang family hosts an engagement party for us. The room is full of influential people, all potential witnesses to their coming downfall. I play my part perfectly, smiling and thanking everyone for their congratulations. Mrs. Zhang parades me around like a trophy, telling everyone how lucky they are to have found such a proper young lady for their son. In the middle of the party, Li Wei's father receives an urgent message. Their family friend Judge Wu has suddenly resigned from a case involving their business. Another carefully placed piece of information, another crack in their foundation. I watch Mr. Zhang's hands shake as he pours himself another drink. Mei Ling makes an appearance at the party. Mrs. Zhang invited her to maintain appearances. She's wearing an expensive new necklace that matches the recent withdrawal from Li Wei's secret account. I compliment her on it sweetly, watching her face turn red. In my past life I was blind to these signs. Now each one is a weapon in my arsenal. As the party winds down, Mrs. Zhang pulls me aside. Sarah, I need you to accompany Li Wei to some business meetings next week. It's time you learned about the family business. I agree enthusiastically. Last time these meetings were where they started using me as their public face, their respectable shield. This time each meeting is another opportunity to expose their lies. Walking home that night, I feel the weight of their secrets in my bag: documents, recordings, bank statements. The Zhang family thought they were getting the same naive girl they deceived before. Instead, they've invited their destruction into their inner circle. Every dinner, every meeting, every family gathering is another chance to dismantle their carefully constructed world. Tomorrow the first major piece of evidence goes public. Let's see how well their perfect family image holds up under real scrutiny. The wedding preparations become a battlefield of secrets. Mrs. Zhang insists on booking the most expensive hotel in the city, inviting hundreds of guests. She doesn't realize that each invitation reveals another connection in their corrupt network. I remember how proud I was in my past life to have such a grand wedding. Now I see it for what it is, a show of power built on lies. During a cake tasting session, Li Wei gets an urgent call. One of their offshore accounts has been flagged for investigation. He steps outside, thinking I can't hear him, frantically calling Mei Ling. "Move the money now," he whispers. "Use the codes I gave you." What he doesn't know is that those codes were changed yesterday, another piece of my plan falling into place. Mrs. Zhang's perfect mask starts cracking under pressure. At a family dinner, she snaps at a servant for using the wrong plates. "Everything must be perfect," she shrieks. Her hands shake as she checks her phone constantly. More business partners are asking questions about their accounts. The investigation I triggered is spreading like wildfire through their network. Li Wei tries to maintain control over both me and Mei Ling. He takes me to expensive restaurants, buys me jewelry, plays the devoted fiancé. Then sneaks away to comfort Mei Ling, promising her it's all just for show. I let him think he's succeeding. In my past life, his gifts blinded me to his betrayal. This time, each present is evidence of their money laundering. The real turning point comes at the wedding dress fitting. Mrs. Zhang invited all her high society friends to watch me try on an overpriced white gown. As I stand on the platform surrounded by mirrors, her phone rings. The color drains from her face. The government has frozen one of their main business accounts. In the chaos that follows, I secretly text reporter Chen. "It's time for phase 2. The next morning, headlines blast across every newspaper. Zhang family business under investigation. Mrs. Zhang calls an emergency family meeting. Li Wei paces the room, running his hands through his hair. His father downs glass after glass of expensive whiskey. I sit quietly, watching their perfect world crumble. "Someone is targeting us," Mrs. Zhang declares, her voice shaking with rage. "We need to find out who." Her eyes scan the room, landing on each family member. When she looks at me, I give her my most innocent smile. The same smile I wore for 30 years while they used me as their shield. Mei Ling makes a critical mistake that evening. Panicked by the investigation, she tries to access the hidden accounts herself. Her clumsy attempt triggers another alert in the banking system. Li Wei rushes to her apartment to do damage control, not knowing I've tipped off reporter Chen about their meeting. The photos hit social media the next morning, Li Wei entering Mei Ling's building late at night. Mrs. Zhang calls me immediately, ready with excuses. "It's just business, dear. You understand, right?" I listen to her lies, remembering how I believed them in my past life. "Of course, Mother Zhang," I reply sweetly. I trust Li Wei completely. At a family business dinner that weekend, everything falls apart. The major investors Li Wei's father invited start asking pointed questions about their accounts. Questions based on the information I leaked. Mr. Zhang stumbles over his explanations. Li Wei tries to smooth things over with his usual charm, but it's too late. The seeds of doubt have grown into full-blown suspicion. Mrs. Zhang makes one last attempt to salvage their reputation. She announces that the wedding will be moved up. "We need to show everyone that our family is stronger than ever," she insists. Li Wei agrees immediately, desperate to maintain their facade. What they don't realize is that their rush to the altar is just another sign of their guilt. The final blow comes from Mei Ling herself. Stressed by the investigation and hurt by Li Wei's apparent abandonment, she makes a scene at a public event. She screams about broken promises, about secret accounts, about years of lies. Mrs. Zhang tries to have her removed, but the damage is done. Their carefully constructed image shatters in front of hundreds of witnesses. That night, as the Zhang family scrambles to contain the fallout, I sit in my room looking at old photos from my past life. Pictures of my wedding day when I thought I was marrying into a perfect family. Pictures of family events where I smiled and played my part while they used me as their respectable front. Pictures of business meetings where I represented their interests, not knowing I was helping them deceive everyone. Li Wei shows up at my door late that night, reeking of alcohol. I can explain everything, he slurs. Mei Ling means nothing. The business problems are just a misunderstanding. We can still have our perfect wedding. I look at him, this man who destroyed me in another life, and feel nothing but pity. There won't be a wedding, I tell him calmly. His eyes widen as I hand him a folder. Inside are copies of every document, every transaction, every piece of evidence I've collected. Your family wanted a shield, I say. Instead, they got a witness. As he stumbles away, clutching the folder with shaking hands, I think about the life I lived before. 30 years of being the perfect daughter-in-law while they built their empire of lies. 30 years of smiling through their betrayals. 30 years of being their shield until they discarded me. Tomorrow, reporter Chen publishes his full investigation. The Zhang family's perfect facade will finally shatter completely. But tonight, I take off their expensive engagement ring and place it on my dresser. In my past life, this ring was a symbol of my imprisonment. Now it's just another piece of evidence in their downfall. The shield they thought would protect them has become the weapon that destroys them. The morning after I reject Li Wei, everything changes. Reporter Chen's investigation hits every major news outlet. I watch from my office as the Zhang family's empire crumbles headline by headline. Zhang family business. Decades of fraud exposed. Hidden accounts and secret lovers. The Zhang family scandal. Famous family's perfect image shatters. Mrs. Zhang tries to maintain control one last time. She calls an emergency press conference, standing proud in her expensive suit. But her hands shake as she reads her prepared statement. These accusations are baseless, she declares. Our family has always operated with the highest integrity. From the back of the room, I watch reporter Chen stand up with copies of their bank statements. Her face turns pale as he starts asking questions. Li Wei's response is predictable. He runs to Mei Ling's apartment, ready to escape with their hidden money. Instead, he finds her packing expensive gifts into suitcases, gifts bought with his family's stolen wealth. Where are you going? He demands. Her answer cuts deep. Your family is finished. I'm leaving while I still can. In my past life, they ran away together. This time, she leaves him standing alone in her empty apartment. The family business partners withdraw their support one by one. Mr. Zhang, once proud and powerful, sits in his office drinking expensive whiskey as investors cancel contracts. The empire he built through decades of corruption collapses in days. Each phone call brings more bad news. Each email announces another partner's departure. I focus on building my own success during this chaos. The skills I learned in 30 years of managing their business now serve my own goals. While their company stock plummets, my new venture thrives. Old business contacts who once respected the Zhang name now seek my guidance instead. My phone rings constantly with offers and opportunities. Mrs. Zhang makes one desperate attempt to salvage their reputation. She shows up at my office unannounced, her designer clothes slightly wrinkled, her perfect makeup smudged. Sarah, please, she begs. Help us fix this. You're still family. I look at her, this woman who once controlled my life, and see only a desperate fraud. Family. I reply. No, I was just your shield. Now I'm your witness. The police start investigating their accounts. Years of financial crimes surface one after another. Mr. Zhang suffers a stress-induced heart attack when officers arrive at his door with a warrant. In the hospital, he finally breaks down and confesses everything. The perfect family patriarch becomes a state's witness against his own empire. Li Wei's transformation is the most dramatic. His charming smile disappears as his world collapses. The bank fires him. His wealthy friends avoid him. His secret accounts are frozen. Without money and status, his confidence shatters. He starts drinking heavily, making desperate phone calls to anyone who might help. No one answers. Mei Ling reappears briefly but not to help. She sells her story to every newspaper willing to pay. Inside the Zhang family scandal, a lover speaks out. She details years of affairs, secret meetings, and financial fraud. Her interviews destroy any sympathy the public might have had for Li Wei. His own mistress becomes another weapon in his destruction. Mrs. Zhang's health deteriorates under the stress. The proud woman who once controlled every detail of my life now hides in her mansion, afraid to face the public. Her social circle abandons her. Her charity board members resign. The perfect image she spent decades building dissolves into scandal and shame. Meanwhile, I thrive. My new business grows stronger each day. I hire talented young people who respect hard work over family connections. My reputation for honesty and innovation spreads through the industry. In my past life, I died bitter and alone. Now I'm building something real, something earned through genuine effort. Li Wei makes one last attempt to win me back. He shows up at my office, sober for once, wearing his old business suit. I've changed, he claims. I see now what I lost. We can start over. I let him talk, remembering how his sweet words once trapped me in a lifeless marriage. When he finishes, I simply point to the door. He leaves without his usual confidence, shoulders slumped in defeat. The final blow to the Zhang family comes from their own social circle. Former friends rush to distance themselves from the scandal. People who once begged for invitations to their parties now pretend they never knew them. Their perfect world of wealth and influence turns its back on them completely. I celebrate my success quietly, enjoying the peace I never had in my past life. My office view shows the city where I once lived as their perfect daughter-in-law. Now I watch their collapse from this height, feeling not joy but a calm sense of justice. The shield they tried to use has become the sword that cut through their lies. Reporter Chen visits me with news. The investigation has expanded to the Zhang family's overseas connections. More arrests are coming. More secrets will be exposed. He asks if I want to tell my story to explain my role in their downfall. I decline. My revenge isn't about fame or public recognition. It's about freedom. The day ends with reports of Li Wei being questioned by police. Mrs. Zhang's social media accounts go silent. Their family name, once synonymous with success and prestige, becomes a cautionary tale. People whisper about the perfect family that built their empire on lies, and the quiet daughter-in-law who exposed it all. In my office, I look at my calendar. Exactly 30 years ago in my past life, I married into the Zhang family. Today, I'm celebrating the opening of my company's third branch. The contrast isn't lost on me. They thought they were getting a shield to protect their perfect image. Instead, they got the architect of their destruction. Tomorrow brings more opportunities, more success, more genuine achievements. But tonight, I enjoy the quiet satisfaction of freedom, something I never had in my past life as their perfect daughter-in-law. 1 year after the Zhang family's collapse, I sit in my office reviewing their final downfall. Mrs. Zhang finally breaks her silence, requesting a private meeting. I agree, choosing a small cafe where I once watched Li Wei meet Mei Ling in my past life. When she arrives, I barely recognize her. Gone are the designer clothes and proud posture. She looks old, tired, and broken. You knew everything from the start, didn't you? She asks, stirring her untouched coffee. I nod slowly. She laughs bitterly. We thought we were so clever finding the perfect shield. A simple, obedient daughter-in-law who would protect our family image. Instead, we invited our destruction into our home. I listen as she reveals the family's final secrets. Li Wei, unable to face his failures, has left the country. He works as an English teacher in a small town, hiding from his past. Mei Ling married a wealthy businessman in Singapore, erasing all connections to the Zhang scandal. Mr. Zhang, still under house arrest, spends his days writing a memoir about the family's crimes. Our perfect family, Mrs. Zhang whispers, was nothing but lies. Even our love was fake. My husband married me for connections. I pushed Li Wei to find a respectable wife while letting him keep his mistress. We thought appearances mattered more than truth. Her hands shake as she reaches for her bag. She pulls out an old photo album, pictures from my wedding day in my past life. I kept these, she says, to remind myself of when everything seemed perfect. Look how innocent you were then. How trusting. I see myself in the photos, young and hopeful, smiling at a family that would destroy me. What changed? She asks. How did you become so strong? I consider telling her about my rebirth, about the 30 years of pain that taught me to fight back. Instead, I simply say, I learned to value truth over appearances. Something your family never understood. News arrives during our meeting. The court has issued its final judgment on the Zhang family's case. Their assets are seized. Their properties confiscated. Their name permanently stained. Mrs. Zhang accepts the news with quiet resignation. We deserve this, she admits. All those years of using people, of building our life on lies. Karma finally caught up with us. Later that evening, Li Wei calls from abroad. His voice sounds different, humbled by failure and time. I understand now, he says. What we did to you. What we tried to make you become. I'm sorry. In my past life I waited 30 years for an apology that never came. Now it means nothing. Your mother told me where to find you, I reply. Why did you run away instead of facing the consequences? His answer reveals everything about his character. I couldn't bear to lose my perfect image. It was all I had. I hang up, remembering how this man's pride destroyed me in another life. The final piece of justice comes unexpectedly. Mei Ling's wealthy husband discovers her past and divorces her. She tries to return to Li Wei, thinking he'll take her back. Instead, she finds him living in a small apartment, teaching basic English to children. Her perfect lover is now just another failed man hiding from his past. My company continues to grow, built on honest work and real relationships. The business world that once respected the Zhang name now looks to me for leadership. Young entrepreneurs seek my advice, knowing my success comes from integrity, not deception. At a charity gala one the Zhang family used to host, I run into my parents. They've watched my transformation with pride and confusion. We never understood why you changed your mind about the marriage, my mother says. But looking at you now, so successful and strong, we know you made the right choice. The final meeting with Mrs. Zhang happens at her old mansion, now being sold to pay their debts. She walks through empty rooms once filled with evidence of their perfect life. We lived in a beautiful cage, she reflects. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But inside we were all prisoners of our own lies. I watch her touch the walls one last time, remembering how these same rooms witnessed my suffering in another life. The perfect family image, I tell her, is worth nothing if it's built on deceit. She nods, finally understanding the lesson that cost them everything. As she leaves, Mrs. Zhang turns back one last time. You were supposed to be our shield, she says quietly. Instead, you became the truth we couldn't hide from. With those words, she walks away from her perfect prison forever. Standing in my office that evening, I look at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Li Wei teaches English to children who don't know his past. Mei Ling lives with her faded dreams of wealth and status. Mrs. Zhang adapts to a simple life without servants or social standing. Their perfect world has shattered completely. In my past life, I died bitter and alone, used up by a family that never valued me. In this life, I stand successful and free, having turned their own weapons against them. The shield they tried to hide behind became the force that exposed their truth to the world. A new invitation arrives on my desk. I'm being honored as Businesswoman of the Year. The award ceremony will be held in the same hotel where I once celebrated my doomed wedding to Li Wei. Life has a sense of poetry sometimes. The sun sets on the city and I smile. In my past life, I never saw this view, trapped in the Zhang family's gilded cage. Now I own the building where I watch day turn to night. Their perfect family image is gone, replaced by truth. Their shield became a sword, their lies exposed by honesty, their power broken by the very person they thought they could control. I am finally truly free.